Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank PCC, IT for Change, KDISC, especially Anita, Trevor, for giving this opportunity to me and setting up this panel uh, to deliberate upon and to discuss very important topic, technology-led, tech-led, economic justice and unpacking regulatory design innovations and new cooperative movements. Before I begin, I would like to say that okay, cooperative movements in India, it's not new. Before independence only, the cooperative movement started by either Gandhiji and through his trusteeships and Ambedkar's, who gave the solutions to the problem of small holding. So we have the genesis about the cooperative movement. The problem about the cooperatives are it's very complex because of the complexity of the issues that we have. The technology could be the solutions and economic justice could be the one in which we can actually reach. Technology could be both constructive and maybe destructive also. Constructive in the sense that okay, as we have seen in the previous presentations, it can give the access, it can empower people, but destructive too because technology also could give exclude people also from the market. Like in many audit study, in one of my paper, technological glitch, where I was doing the online survey about the engineering students, especially coming from the Dalit, Adivasi and Muslims, when they are applying to the job market portals, they were completely ignored and maybe they were not getting the call out rate also. So is this a economic justice? And how the platforms can technologically exclude people from the job markets also? So technological platforms or the job market platform, are they really neutral? Really, are they really empowering? Are they really promoting economic justice? So economic justice, which set us up, which gives a context in which they have to create an ecosystem in which it will promote the equal opportunity for all. Are they really ensuring in that? Because it is a very complex issues. We really need a governance model. We really need a legal systems. We really need a system in which everybody will have an equal level playing field. But then there is a complexity, and this complexity we really need to thrive. So that's the first part. Does the cooperative models are really able to come out with that? There are two model examples I would like to highlight. The first model, the state I come from, is Maharashtra. Sugar lobby is the one lobby which is actually surviving. Why? Because of the particular caste group handle that lobby. Then you also have a Dinesh Bidi example. Because of the Nambudri's effort, where homogenizing the worker's identity has created, uh, you could say, created workers' identity in which it is thriving. So we really need to homogenize people in which the cooperative models could stand. Cooperatives actually contribute 24% of the national GDP, and it is has a potentials to contribute. But then we really need to see how it can actually go. Recently, the government of India has taken two initiatives. National Initiative of Digit, National Initiative of, uh, uh, sorry, National Initiative of Digital Governance, in which the IITs have to come together to share their knowledge with the other IITs, in which they have to promote the cooperatives with the smaller IITs and the smaller colleges, in which they have to form the platforms in which they have to perform the knowledge. And second one, national cooperative policies, in which 43 initiative has been taken. So the governance has become the main parameters of development in which they have to foster the new new development initiatives. In this context, we have to rethink about the new economic model. So we have a wonderful panel over here, and I would like to call first panelist, and let's hear from her.
Okay, I start from the beginning. Good afternoon and greetings from the ILO. Thank you, Anita and Trevor, for your invitation. I come from the International Labour Organization. It's the specialized agency of the United Nations responsible for the world of work. It has a social justice, decent work mandate and recognizes the relevance of cooperatives in advancing this mandate. The constitution of the ILO refers to cooperatives, and there has been a co-op unit since 1920. And I have been heading this unit since 2012. The ILO is a normative institution, so it's very much about setting international labor standards in emerging work areas like the platform economy and all the issues that you have brought up around decent work deficits in the platform economy and how co-ops may be able to address them. This is very much about that gap in the international normative also arena. So how do we imagine a normative framework where decent work conditions in freedom, equity, security, dignity can transpire in the for work and workers in the informal economy? So when we talk about decent work in the platform economy and relation to cooperatives, we need to think of decent work in the cooperatives, in the platform cooperatives, but also through platform cooperatives. So when we say decent work in platform cooperative, we mean those working in cooperatives, including self-employed and employees. And when we say decent work through cooperatives, we are referring more to the role that cooperatives, platform cooperatives can play in advocacy, education, in advancing decent work outside platform co-ops, but within the platform economy and beyond the platform economy. So I just wanted to make that distinction. The second distinction I quickly want to make is, the different typologies of platform cooperatives are also an important consideration in identifying what kind of normative frameworks we are needed to address them. A tech worker co-op providing online services has different types of work and workers compared to a cooperative of delivery workers or home care workers who are informal and depend on an online app to find work. And that's still very different from an existing cooperative in a given, maybe traditional sector, extending services to members, users, communities through online services, like establishing online market for their goods. So I would like to reflect upon the above mentioned through a lens of most recent developments in the UN system and within the ILO around normative frameworks and how they apply to platform economy. And I want to just draw a few quick conclusions vis-a-vis the platform cooperatives. March of this year, there was a discussion on existing gaps in current labor standards vis-a-vis the platform economy. After this discussion, the ILO governing body decided to place on its agenda for 2025 International Labour Conference an item on decent work in the platform economy. And this will be a standard setting item with two discussions, so one in 25, one in 26. This is a big deal because this is about bringing international labor standards to the platform economy, and it will be very important, therefore, for those of us thinking about what it means to have cooperatives in the platform economy to also engage with this discussion. And all these came after a meeting of experts of governments, workers, employers, organizations, but also International Cooperative Alliance and European Commission, OECD, etc. The normative gaps identified in international labor standards and a new international labor standard on the platform economy, of course, are very important for platform cooperatives. On the one hand, platform cooperatives can contribute to promoting decent work. On the other hand, the absence of a conducive framework may prevent platform cooperatives from being established to begin with, and we have many countries contexts like that. Or such an absence of a conducive environment can undermine the prospects for addressing decent work deficits in and through platform cooperatives. So what are just a few issue areas in labor standards? First, as you may know, there's an ILO recommendation, number 193, on the promotion of cooperatives. This is the only international standard on cooperatives, and it actually provides a great deal of guidance on how to advance cooperatives across sectors. 118 countries have used this recommendation to revamp their cooperative laws and policies. So if we were to follow the guidance of this recommendation, it would also help, it's a very inclusive kind of recommendation guidance, so it could actually help countries develop legislation and policies that allow for cooperatives to grow in the platform economy. So I recommend those of you thinking about these issues, making cooperative law more conducive for cooperatives and the platform economy to grow. I very much encourage you to look at that. Then, let's look at the employment relationship. Labor and social protection legislation often excludes self-employed and categories of workers in the informal economy, whether this is in law or in practice. In court rulings around the world, there is currently no unanimity when it comes to classifying platform workers as either employees or self-employed. So there is a need to combat disguised employment relationships, both in situ platform workers and in online platform workers. There's also a need to promote decent work for all in the platform economy, irrespective of whether they are employees or self-employed. So when setting up a platform cooperative, this status in relation to employee, self-employed, how this is. Okay, let me select another important one. I have like 5, 6 of them, but I'll select another one. Then there is the need, for instance, in relation to equality and opportunity of treatment, there is a need to prevent discriminatory practice biases in the use of algorithms in the context of platform work based on legally protected characteristics such as race and gender. These biases may be input training or programming based. I know you've discussed them. So in developing platform cooperative bylaws, it's very important also to kind of build these in. Labor inspection is another issue because there are practical difficulties for inspection of platform work and workplaces, if this is riders, drivers, or home care workers. And algorithmic management also constitutes a barrier to this kind of inspection. So there needs to be also in partnership with cooperative movement ways to inspect platform shops to improve their practices. I have a few others around wages and resolution of labor disputes and cross-border nature platform economy, but I will stop. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite Anurag.
Yeah, very good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. Before I start, let me clear that I'm not expert on this topic, but I came here with my some experience of working and developing the platform cooperative while I was in previous job. The very first question, tech-enable economic justice. It's very tricky because economic justice we can only say when there is a the equitable economic landscape for everyone to play fair. So I don't think so we have that in India as of now. But let me share my own experience. While I was in a previous organization working for the informal sector, specifically street vendors, just after when the act was passed in 2014, we developed a mobile application and platform cooperative for street vendors to, you know, deliver the foods, groceries straight to the home, so that the earning can be there double, and also they can get the recognition within the society because they have an act. So we developed that application within a house, within our own funds. In 2015, we launched it. Then after 2015, when we launched, it was running okay, not very high speed. So we approached many investors, angel investors, and also the company, government also, state governments also, to invest in it. They never did. So what actually happened is by the 2017-18, our, the everyday sales of the this has start going down. And the same time, the Swiggy and Zomato entered in the same field in Delhi, and they had a million of dollars for the marketing and to give the discount to the people. So they started coming into this sector also of, the delivering the groceries, vegetable, street food, and everything. So what the very first lesson I had learned from that is that for the cooperative, it's not very easy to find a funder or someone who can invest in your cooperative. And there was a one talk, then I thought maybe the government can subsidize something so that people start investing in cooperative. Maybe they can give the tax benefit to the investors if they are investing in a cooperative. And so they get some sort of benefits, because all the investors, they want a quick refund, quick return, and they are not happy to invest in a cooperative. Secondly, the member of the cooperatives, they don't have that much of money, especially if you are working in informal sector, taxi drivers, street vendors, domestic workers, to reinvest within their cooperative. So especially when we are in a lower middle class, income country, you see in a foreign, in Europe, in America, you can raise the crowdfunding, but it's tough in India to raise a crowdfunding also. So, like, if you see in a technical way, it's very difficult to sustain when you are developing a platform cooperative, uh, because you need a fund, and from where you will get the fund, that's a big question. Secondly, the legal framework, it's very different in a state to state within in India. Like, there was a talk of the Karnataka auto app, this thing. I still remember in 2016 when the Karnataka government came up with the Motor Vehicle Act. This that time you cannot register as a taxi aggregator cooperative. You can register if you are individual or you have a register under the Company Act, not as a cooperative. But things change in 2020 when the Supreme Court comes, and then the government has changed the amendment, the bill. 2022 they came up with the app, but they also have a support with the Just Pay. They invested so much in them. It's not only the auto drivers who has invested in them. The same if you see in a Karnataka, it's a Karnataka government who is supporting all the auto and the taxi drivers and developing this sort of app and platform cooperative. In Kerala, sorry, in Kerala. So if we are talking about the this alternative model where the workers have a equal say, they get the decent pay, you need to have a sort of legal framework where the government can also support these sort of people, and even the investors can be the promote to invest in a cooperative model. Like I said, if the investors, I was talking to the few investors like in 2016-17, they were saying if we would get the tax benefit, we would be happy to invest in a cooperative. Why should I invest in a cooperative where the return will take years and years? Maybe it will fail also. So that's the thing. So all I want to say is, if you really want to have a tech-enabled economic justice, please try to design a sort of framework where everybody get the equal, equitable economic landscape to play for it. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Professor Babu Mathew.
Friends, thank you for the opportunity to be with all of you. I come from the National Law School, and in our university, we have a Center for Labor Studies. And through this center, we carried out three empirical studies in the midst of food delivery workers and taxi drivers. One was before COVID, Another was after COVID, both of them in Bangalore, and thereafter one in Hyderabad, in collaboration with Sheikh Salahuddin and the union which exists there. So this coincided with another pre-concern that we had in the Center for Labor Studies, and that is to be understood if we take note of what is happening in India. Many of you may be aware of the fact that labor jurisprudence in India was a very advanced one. Unfortunately, during the recent period, 4 new labor codes have been introduced, which repeal 29 pieces of labor legislation, almost doing away with the entire earlier jurisprudence. And when we analyzed this, and when I say when we analyzed this, we did it in collaboration with a working group that was set up, consisting of trade union leaders, especially from South India, working in the unorganized sector, and with trade unions from Delhi. So through this collective effort, we looked into the new laws. And one very clear conclusion we could arrive at was that the new laws almost completely neglect the unorganized workers. So when we are speaking of gig and platform workers, they form a part of the unorganized workers. In terms of numbers, the unorganized workers constitute nearly 90% of the total workforce of India. And the total workforce of India is 500 million. And so it must be taken note of that the new legislation ignores the overwhelming majority. So in that context, during the course of our work, one attempt that we made was that we need a general labor legislation to focus entirely on the unorganized sector, more precisely called those who are working as informal workers. So on the one hand, we worked on this alternate legislation, and on the other hand, we picked up sectors in which there was already some legislation existed, which also was repealed, and also some sectors where there was no legislation at all. So in this latter category came gig and platform workers. Since that was a very difficult sector to work with, we gave it priority and we completed drafting a legislation for gig and platform workers in consultation with primarily the food delivery workers and some contact with the drivers. So through this exercise, we have created a draft legislation which has been shared with the government of India. We had a meeting with the state labor minister, who gave us a very patient hearing, and his entire ministry was there to listen to us, and they have promised that there will be a further stakeholders meeting. This also comes against the background of gig and platform workers legislation, which was completed in Rajasthan. Of course, that law has not yet come into implementation because of the election process that is presently on. In a few days, we'll know the outcome, and hopefully the outcome will be something which might facilitate the onward journey of the gig and platform workers in Rajasthan. From that legislation, we have borrowed one very important idea, and that is the idea of deducting cess or levy per transaction. There was an interaction with all the aggregators in Hyderabad, in Telangana, and during that interaction, we found almost all the aggregators of India were there, and their primary articulation was, we are happy to make a deduction from the turnover of the company, but it cannot be per transaction. That was an interesting debate, and during the course of the debate, I think they had to move on to the back foot. And it is in that context that the Rajasthan legislation is a very major first step in that direction. The Karnataka government, of which I was speaking, has taken note of that legislation. My gut feeling is that the Karnataka government also may prefer the Rajasthan model of legislation. But among those who came together in order to draft this legislation, we felt that we need to go beyond that. And from that point of view, the issues that we took up for in our legislation is, first of all, freedom of association and collective bargaining, the question of wages, the question of working conditions, the question of social security, the question of occupational safety and sexual harassment issues, and of course the need for open discussion through the algorithms, especially when it comes to the incentives. India has a long tradition of successful collective bargaining in many industries, and therefore that tradition can be invoked here. And there are some aggregators who occasionally speak in terms of endorsing the ILO standards on freedom of association and collective bargaining. So this legislation is an attempt to see if we can take that effort forward. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you, Professor Babu. Now I would like to invite Sai Amulya.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Amulya. I teach at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. I am also affiliated to FemLab and SEIS, Southern Center for Inequality Studies, University of Witwatersrand. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in the company of all of you working towards economic justice and worker welfare. It's inspirational and fills me with hope. Informed by feminist theory, I'm going to take a granular approach to foreground the multitude of problems that platform workers and salon sector face, rather than talk in abstract. And as we think about what kind of progressive intervention that platform co-ops could make, and if we can leverage existing networks to do so, and also when we think about regulations to work towards economic justice. So let me begin right away. Picture this: 9 women crammed into an auto, which is a 3-wheeler vehicle in India that typically can only accommodate 3 people, taking a savari ride to their workplace. This is how domestic workers in Hyderabad travel to their workplace every day. These shared auto rides provide opportunity for these groups to discuss a variety of issues related to their everyday work life, trade stories, brainstorm solutions as a mini collective. En route to the workplace, which is a 15 minute to 30-minute ride depending on the traffic, they would discuss how much each of them earned to fix the going rate in a particular locality, how many paid leaves that they could ask for, and difficult customers to avoid or homes to avoid. It is also during these auto rides that the unspoken rule of not snatching work from each other was voiced. Older and more experienced workers would warn those new to the trade against working for particular customers known to harass domestic workers during these auto rides. Now, women in informal work mobilize themselves not always via protests, not always through meetings, not always in large numbers, but also through their everyday conversations, micro actions, and on their way to their workplace. Cut to the present, the steady rise of on-demand, home-based care work, platforms such as Book My Buy, Urban Company, which has given rise to jobs or gigs that are marked by newer forms of precarity, worker isolation, information asymmetries about ratings, blended supervision that weakens workers' collectivization and collective organization by triggering individual and collective anxiety about their futures. However, as recent protests by platform workers across the world suggest, in China, in Philippines, in South Africa, in India, despite constraints, workers find ways to collectivize and protest using messaging apps such as WeChat, ShareChat, Telegram, WhatsApp. And as part of my research at FemLab, I focused on platformized salon services. We found that women workers in home-based care work, specifically beauty work, used WhatsApp to mobilize themselves. They collectivized and protested against a platform in Hyderabad. From our engagement with these beauty gig workers or beauty platform workers, what we found out is commissions, new subscription plans offering discounts without consulting providers, expansion of hubs, lack of emergency funds in case of accidents or any medical emergency, and difficulties in understanding how ratings could take an overall dip almost overnight. These all emerged as some of the main issues that workers discussed in these groups. When the escalation of these issues to the managerial level did not lead to any kind of resolution, then workers were forced to protest and lodge a case against the platform in Hyderabad. I'm not going to take the name of the platform, but you might already guess which platform I'm talking about. Apart from grievances with the platform, workers also foregrounded an issue that is rarely discussed in both academic scholarship and popular discourse, that of customer attitudes and behavior, of being treated with no dignity by middle class customers, such as not being allowed to use washroom, what they could or could not touch, what not to do to risk customers' displeasure, An unspoken rule was workers should not use phones while working. Often, this wasn't explicitly stated, but providers learned to read customers' body language, tone, and other behavioral tells to not risk low ratings. These discriminatory practices gain legitimacy with platform standard operating procedures, right? The idea is that service partners or providers must sanitize whatever they come into contact with, or not being allowed to use washrooms cannot be untangled from the discourses of caste and polluting bodies in India. Even though harassment is defined in broad terms, mental, it's inclusive of verbal, non-verbal, physical, mental, rarely is there an attempt to examine experiences of harassment, abuse, and exploitation from the lens of gender, caste, class, and also often religion. Individual complaints against customers would go unheard by the platform. Seemingly, one off incidents did not warrant any action. And since the same provider is not assigned to a customer on a regular basis, how would one identify this repeat offender? WhatsApp group to the rescue. Any troublesome customer would be reported to in these groups, information passed on. Repeat offenders would be identified by the providers to protect themselves, and they would more often than not cancel the bookings after accepting them at the cost of a penalty. When multitude partners refuse to take bookings from particular ID, then the platform springs into action and then their customer IDs are blocked. But customers can always create new IDs. So it became imperative for providers to flag particular locations and names of customers. And that is how whisper networks were used to warn each other about customers who are particularly difficult and harass service providers. Now, WhatsApp and Whisper networks emerge as a potent tool that providers use to navigate platform work and avoid a domino effect on the physical, mental, and financial well-being. I would just like to end by saying that we need to work on 4 interdependent regulations of force, which is market law, architecture, and norms. And as we see, through the course of these 2 days, we've learned that platform co-ops have the potential, and there is hope yet because we could perhaps tap into existing networks and see how that works out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sai Amulya. Now I would like to invite our second last speaker, Mr. Costa.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Guilherme Costa. I'm from Brazil, and I am a manager for intelligence and innovation at OCB, which is the Brazilian Cooperatives Organization. We face on a daily basis the challenge to talk about innovation and data-driven culture to cooperatives in our country. And I will talk a little about our work with traditional cooperatives, so you understand what a large industry this is in our country. And then I will talk about the main challenges so that cooperatives can reach a more tech-based platform economy. Okay, so next slide, please. So we are more than 4.6 thousand cooperatives in Brazil nowadays. We are in 20 million members. So 1 in each 10 Brazilians are a member of a cooperative. And we generate more than 500,000 jobs in our country. So this is a huge industry. Next slide, please. In agriculture, we are responsible for more than 43% of the country's grain production. In electricity, we are featured in consumer satisfaction index in more than 800 municipalities. For workers' cooperatives, it's more than 180,000 workers organized in providing goods and services. For banking, we are the only banking agency in more than 260 cities. So if there were no cooperatives in the cities, it would not be possible to cash money or to make investments. In healthcare, healthcare cooperatives are responsible for more than 30% of market share in Brazil. For transportation, our drivers move more than 450 million tons of cargo annually. And for groceries, there are supermarkets with 2.1 million total members in retails for these food co-ops. Next slide, please. So all this large movement, and we expect to earn around $200 billion by the year of 2027. It's possible due to strong regulation, and this is our framework our legal framework. Ella mentioned yesterday that she wanted to know a little bit more about frameworks. This is the framework in our country. So we have cooperative general law, we have our constitution that grants cooperatives autonomy, we have our civil code, and we have a specific regulatory agencies for banking, healthcare, mining, electricity, and many other sectors. And this regulation is designed with us, with the people, with the cooperatives. We talk to our congressmen, we talk to our representatives, we talk to the government on a daily basis to preserve and enhance this legislation. So we've reached a point where now we discuss how can we make these cooperatives that are so successful to enter in a more tech-based and platform economy. And these are the main challenges that we put. Can you please pass the slides? So these are the main challenges for new cooperativism, new challenges for platform cooperatives in Brazil, so they could emerge and start being successful. And as the organization of cooperatives, we want to represent them as well. So these are the main challenges. First is shortage of awareness about what a cooperative is and how to become a member and why being a cooperative is good. So people may buy products from the supermarket, they may be members from the banking cooperatives and still don't know what a cooperative is and what are its principles. So we need to raise awareness about what a cooperative is. We need to educate people about cooperatives principles. Number two, that traditional cooperatives are widely spread in Brazil. So we have thousands of people working for delivery app foods, drivers apps, and ever since the economic crisis in 2016, we have thousands of families that rely on those apps. And these apps are widely known, they are user-friendly, they are cheap. So, and they have almost all the market share in Brazil, so everybody pretty much uses the same one or two apps. So how can new platforms, how can new apps compete with them? I think this is a big challenge. Number three, it's digital transformation for the COP movement. So our cooperatives, they are still doing a lot of traditional business. So how can we make them more digital? Access to funding. Brazilian legislation doesn't allow outside investors to buy shares from the cooperatives. So you either get government funding or go to a bank and get a loan, or you raise the money among the members. And challenge number 5, which I think is the one that I don't have an answer for, and I hope this conference helps me through, is how to make digital entrepreneurs more interested in becoming members of platform cooperatives. Brazil has thousands of people who work through the internet, who sell products on marketplaces or work for apps. How do we make more interested in becoming owners of their own work, of their own platform? How do we educate them that they could own their own work, they could own their own technology? That's my main question. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. Now I would like to invite last speaker, Mr. Sangam.
Good afternoon, friends. It has been a real pleasure and a great learning experience over the last 2 days for people like us who come from the trade union movement, learning about platform cooperativism. And this has been a really exciting learning, hearing all the experiments that are being done. But for us, I come from, my name is Sangam, and I come from the labor sector. We have organized gig and platform workers, primarily cab drivers and food delivery riders. And we have a national federation called Indian Federation of App-Based Transport Workers. So basically, that's the area of our experience. And for us, our struggle today is at a very, very basic stage, although we have survived as an organization for the last 3 years. But we are still asking for dignity at work. We are still asking for respect. We are still asking for decent earnings. We are still asking that our overtime work should be compensated. We are still asking for decent workplace conditions, paid weekly off, accident and life insurance, maternity benefits, and old age benefits. And we have colleagues sitting here, our sister Sheetal, who's an Uber driver, our brother Ramzan Sheikh, who's an Uber driver, our National General Secretary Sheikh Salahuddin, who spoke yesterday and who is also an Uber driver. And if you were to ask these comrades, they will simply say, give us our basic labor rights, workers' rights, and the rest can follow. So that is the stage at which we are. Gig workers in India work in a largely unregulated environment, which leaves them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse by platform aggregators. The platform economy has replaced human management with algorithmic mechanisms of discipline and control, bringing forth new challenges for workers. Ratings, about which some of the speakers have also spoken, based on the collection of data about workers' performance and customer reviews, feed algorithmic systems which determine future work allocation for our workers. Thus, the so called flexibilization of work, as proposed by the platform aggregators, is actually inflexibility. There's no flexibility available, everything is controlled. Compelled to fulfill customer demands and maintain satisfactory ratings, the workers keep working on punishing schedules, 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. So what I'm trying to drive at is, the point that I'm trying to drive at is, our session says tech-enabled economic justice. But what's happening in our case is tech is being used to abuse and deprive workers of economic justice. And that's the reality of our lives. The challenges instituted by algorithmic mechanisms interface with deep-rooted social issues. The systems framed as essential to our digitized workplaces produce exaggerated effects for marginalized workers, something that our sister here also talked about. And so, this again is an example of how tech, or people behind the tech, the aggregator companies, are using tech to deprive workers of economic justice. The aggregation of worker data footprints allows for a new form of control over the labor process that is unprecedented. Database tracking, profiling, and workplace decision making stemming from algorithmic control risk a major slide back of fundamental labor guarantees. They also intensify workplace discrimination, something that our colleague from the ILO said. And this is again how tech is being used to deprive workers of economic justice. And as a deep shift affected by platformization permeates the entire economy, the other speakers also spoke about it, how this is only increasing in our entire economy. The platformization is just increasing from one sector to the other. It is vital that the agenda of decent work includes concerns around database exploitation in the new algorithmic reorganization of workplaces, something that our colleague from the ILO also spoke about. So, what then is the remedy, or how then do we remedy this situation? So we are a trade union organization. We have we know how to fight. We know how to organize. We know how to collectivize. We know how to campaign. We know how to build solidarity. We know how to build network. And so it's probably these strong points of ours that we will be using. So what we demand is that digital platforms should provide for fair rates. Now, maybe here it's not technology which can give us fair rates, but it's the people behind technology, the aggregator companies who, like yesterday's people spoke, started off with 25 rupees per kilometer to the taxi driver, and today that rate has come down to 6 rupees per kilometer, 8 rupees per kilometer, with the aircon on in your cab. So um, somewhere these companies will have to kind of provide fair rates equivalent to a living wage guarantee for the hours that the drivers and the delivery workers are logged in, factoring in the work related costs. Digital platforms will be required to provide decent work conditions, which I've already talked about. Ensure that algorithmic management becomes transparent and accountable. From fixing and allocating rights to deciding earnings and deductions, commissions, there should be transparency, and regulation should ensure that these algorithms are fair. And the last point that I would like to make to achieve this kind of economic justice that we are talking about is the big issue of deactivation of our IDs. Now, these are done arbitrarily and unilaterally by the platform companies without any prior notice or due process. These deactivations result in huge losses of livelihood and income. And there is already a global movement building up against unfair deactivation. We, the Indian workers in the Gigant platform, have joined 6 other nations to lodge an OECD complaint, and the Dutch NCP is looking into that OECD complaint against Uber for these kinds of deactivation. So I think I'll stop here, and then maybe if there are any questions or any points that come up in discussion, I'll be happy to address them.
I think I agree with the last point that the technology has abused the labor rights, and that's why the economic justice cannot be possible. Technology has played an important role, and I believe that it has a tremendous potentials to give the economic justice, provided that it has to brought under the frame of regulatory. Like Seaman has pointed out that ILO has a normative institutions, but does this labor code, as Professor Babu pointed out, that does this labor code reflect those normative principles? Does this labor code reflect those spirit of these normative labor codes? Does this labor code also reflect this that constitutional spirit on this labor code? Does the state takes this accountability that they will protect the labor right? That's why every state is now struggling, where the state is actually taking the accountability. Now state is giving too much emphasis on that we should have cooperative model of development, and since last 2 years we have seen, okay, uh, everywhere the cooperative model of development the state is doing. I'm now worried, and this is the question to the audience also, that cooperative model of development is also centralization of the power. Centralization of a power is also one greater threat to the democracy that we have seen, whether it is Maharashtra, where the centralization power is really threat to the political dispensation. Are we really going? Because centralization power can actually create a different kind of a political instability. Are we really going towards that state? But then here we are actually demanding this centralization of power. Then we have to demand that, okay, if we are going for this cooperative model of development, then the right should be given to the civil society and the workers participation, to the people, that there should be, like accountability should be given to the people. So the governance model needs to be brought in. And I agree that, okay, if we are actually, then cooperative model needs to be think about that. Okay, the now in the development discourse, the cooperative model needs to be said, because there is a complexity. Like Sai Amulya pointed out that rightly, and I also highlighted in my initial remarks also, that caste, class, gender, that it's very difficult. Like I was talking to Sheikh that, okay, like it is very difficult that, okay, to mobilize people based upon this slide. So this complexity also needs to be highlighted. With this, I would like to stop here. Do we have a time? No. So thank you all the panelists, and thank you. Steven, do you have any questions? I would like to thank you.
I guess I would like to say something if there is not a question. I'm sorry, I can't. Oh, there is a question?
No, there is no question.
Okay. No, I was just thinking, listening to, of course, the other panelists as well. There is the issue, of course, of the cross-border nature of platform work that complicates also compliance and enforcement. And platforms need to be legally incorporated in each of the countries in which the workers operate. And then in the case of web-based platforms, the platform, the clients, the workers can be in different jurisdictions. it makes the application of local labor laws very difficult. Location-based platform work entails a cross-border relationship when the platform and the worker
Seaman,
are not.
I think. Okay, complete.
So just that, we have some lessons learned, I think, from the work, for instance, around supply chains and labor rights, advancing labor rights across supply chains. So we need to keep applying these. That's my first point. And then the second point is in relation to, the reason the co-op forum is emerging here is to, address some of these deficits, to bring people together, communities together, workers, members, users together, to be able to push back on this extractive, nature of platform economy. So I think the model is right, is intuitively right. But of course, we really need to innovate to be able to overcome, because the challenges are so many. Back to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Seaman. I think we are closing now these sessions, and thank you very much all the panelists. Thank you, Seaman. Over to you.